Hello, I'm Marky Dragon, also known as Marcus Eikenberry in real life. And hello, everyone. We've got an interview here today for Crowfall. We've got Gordon Walton, and is this Todd here too, or is this
Thomas Blair.
This is Thomas Blair.
Thomas Blair? Okay, fill in. So,
Man, it's a harsh audience, you know.
yeah, starting with me. Okay, so now you guys have the Kickstarter and everything for Crowfall. And I've linked to it in chat here a few times for anyone who wants to go see it. Tell us, what is Crowfall? And if you could, and I don't know if your camera will aim down just a little bit more. Either that or you can slouch down there, Gordon. No, actually up a little bit more. Sorry.
A little bit more. Okay.
Yeah. Try not to cut off the top of your head. There we go. Perfect. So
Crowfall. All right, we're talking about Crowfall, and Crowfall is a lot of things. Obviously, that's core. It's an MMO. It's a strategy game, and we're taking elements from a lot of games that we've seen in the last 15 years that we've all played and loved. Specifically, we're relating it to a lot of the EVE elements, especially the hardcore economy, as well as gear destruction. I mean, a lot of these elements,
hardcore PvP and hardcore player economy.
Yeah, a lot of those elements have kind of filtered out of the more recent MMOs because they were very harsh and not accessible. So we're actually looking to kind of go back to some of the roots of the MMO as we see it, and kind of reincorporate some of those elements and follow those paths and see where they lead.
Does accessible mean dumbed down? Okay, I'm just asking.
Accessible, that big buzzword in the industry for the last 10 years.
We'll get into that. I heard that too. So there's kind of just a little bit of a glimpse of what Crowfall is. Now, I want to get past one really huge hurdle that people have about the type of funding you're doing. You're doing Kickstarter. Any of us who have funded over 10 or 20 things have been screwed at least once. And so how can we trust you guys to bring this to fruition, to make this an actual game and get us in there?
Well, first, you must be a bigger risk taker than I am, because I think I've funded about 85 different crowd funds, and I've only been screwed once.
Oh, I'm getting used to it now.
Not a reasonable excuse. But I guess I'm not as big a risk taker is what I'm saying. I must be choosing wisely. I think that the key to any Kickstarter is faith. Do you have faith in the game or whatever you're crowdfunding? Because, if you crowdfund a piece of hardware or a game or a tabletop game or whatever, one is, do you want the product? That's first and foremost. And then second, do you have faith that it's going to get delivered and going to get delivered in the vision that it's being projected as? Mm-hmm. And I think, everyone has to make that decision for themselves. In fact, we don't really want people to back us if they're going to be really squirrely about it. It'd be better if they wait for the product to come out. Mm-hmm. But for people who actually want to be along for the ride as we build it and give us lots of input, we'd like to have those people along. And then they own part of the product from the beginning. They own part of this vision. They're going to help us shape it because we're going to be listening to the people who back us as we go along, as long as they're talking to us about stuff that was in the original vision. If people try to talk us into making wow along the way, that's not going to work out very well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. And now you have a very long history in the video game industry. I know that you and I first...
You forgot the word sordid history.
Sordid history. Okay. Well, I know that you and I met probably back Ultima Online.
This
And so what is that? 15 years ago or something?
Yep.
And I know you've been around in the video game industry this length of time. So can you tell us just a little bit about I guess your pedigree? What makes you a good person to be running this operation and making this game?
Well, I've made so many mistakes in my career. I'm hoping to make some brand new mistakes rather than the old ones. Seriously, I started making games in 1977 on cassette for the PET computer, and actually published some back then. So I'm like really, really old school. I'm as old school as you get. I made standalone games for about 17, 18 years, and then started working on MMOs in 1995 at Kesmai. And so I really have worked pretty exclusively on massively multiplayer online games since that time. Mm-hmm. And I've to touch a lot of them. I've gotten to do due diligence on a lot more. to me, it's the most exciting part of the market to work in because we don't know all the rules. And part of the problem with the market today is that people believe that WoW has shown us that here's what all the rules are. And that's not true.
WoW is the anomaly. It's not it's the outlier.
I think of it as an algae bloom that's like choking all the life out of the.
It sucks all the oxygen out of the room, is what we like to say.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So because it's a local maxima like that, it has stopped the experimentation that was going on 15 years ago about how to make an MMO when it was even started, right? So a lot of ideas that were started then kind of died on the vine, not because of anything else other than people were running where the money was, running to find out, okay, is there a new blue ocean for us to play in over here that nobody's building? And so that's what's driven somebody like me who's been making MMOs for 20 years to come back and go, okay, maybe we missed some stuff in the beginning that we should go back to and try to revisit. Now that we know more, can we go back and do something radically different rather than something that's just kind of different, which is what's killing the marketplace right now.
Yeah, if Gordon likes to say that some of the design concepts that we're trying were declared dead in the last 10 years. We kind of went down a different path because everybody was trying to follow WoW.
Well, you already mentioned that the kind of the hardcore aspect of this that a lot of other games have discounted because it creates some barrier to entry or some barrier to fun. But from what I'm hearing so far, it sounds like you're not going for the general, everybody. You're going for the people who want to play these type of games and to have a really great experience. And that's one of the things that Eve is brilliant at, which you guys have referenced.
Yes, well, Eve, creates community through the adversity of the game. Simplify it greatly, right?
A community of trolls.
Early MMOs, there was a lot of adversity in those games, even if they were PvE experiences. The adversity, was kind of player against developer at some level because the games, had so many issues and were so challenging. So that I miss that kind of level of community in the games that I play. The games that I play are more surface than that over particularly the last 10 years. And I think that we need to get back to something where real community gets created, and we're in a different time and place. The ante to play the MMO game was very, very big. And today, with the technology that's on the table and the commoditization of hardware, the commoditization of servers, the commoditization of tools, suddenly a small team can actually build an MMO that's credible. And that was not true. I mean, there were people who tried it, but their production values were crap. It was very difficult for them. So today we're in a different competitive environment, a different context. And suddenly the idea for us of having 100,000 customers is fabulous. We don't need millions of customers to fund the thing that we're going to build because it's not going to cost as much as the MMOs that have been being built have cost. And while we're talking about cost, we are asking for crowdfunding, but in fact, we have money from other sources already, and we're going to get other money from other sources, mostly from selling overseas rights. The full development of the game. We can't build the game for $1 million, right? We spent more than $1 million to go to Kickstarter.
Wow.
Yeah, to get ready for Kickstarter costs that kind of money. So we wanted to go to Kickstarter for was to say, okay, is this vision even going to, can we market proof it?
If people will fund it, people want to play what you've put out there.
Exactly. It shows there's actually a market for it.
Right.
And we're going to end up, if we end up with 15,000, 20,000 people who funded us along the way, we figured that for every one of those, there's probably 10 more who would play it because most people aren't going to put money up front.
Right. Especially not since it delivers until December 2016, and that date could slip.
Well, all dates could slip.
Yeah.
I mean, we're pretty confident in our date, but that's, we're developers, so we're obviously confused.
You're born that way.
Yeah. You wouldn't be doing development if you weren't an optimist at some level.
Absolutely.
Optimistic as I try to be, I'm still a radical optimist, I think.
So let's, Thomas.
Yes.
Now, I do recognize you. I think we've met before, possibly.
Probably.
Probably, yes.
We've been this for a long time, too.
Yeah. I know. It's been a while since I've been in any conferences, but so tell me a little bit about your background and how you fit into the whole equation here.
Sure. So I was a hardcore gamer back in the early 2000s, and one day I got a call from Sony Online Entertainment asking them if I wanted to come down and be a game master. And I kind of launched that into a development career. I ended up as a...
Wait, you started as a regular player who was a game master, and now you're here?
Yeah.
Okay, just pointing that out for all the people watching that always ask that. Yeah, go ahead.
That was a path of entry a long time ago because companies were looking for the hardcore players because they were the most ravenous and knew most about the product. So I got onto the EverQuest Live team. After a couple expansions, I transitioned out to the Galaxies team. Was on Galaxies for many years, led the team there at the end, and then went over to DC Universe Online and turned that from a paper document into a full-fledged MMO. And then after that, worked with Gordon over at Disney for a couple years, and then found myself in Crowfall.
Yeah, cool.
You kind of walk down the street.
Yeah, I was just like
fell in the hole, and you were in Crowfall.
Gordon just gave me a call. I was like, "Hey, you want to come out?" I'm like, "All right."
He set a trap.
But yeah, I mean, I've always been a really I spend far too much time playing MMOs. Luckily, I married a woman who loves MMOs as well, so it's kind of our activity. So I play games probably 40 or 60 hours after work. So I'm all over the place.
Cool. Yes. That qualifies. I mean, if you guys ever heard of Auto Assault, where nobody had played the game while they were developing it, that was a disaster. Anyway.
Yeah, you have to love your product. I mean,
absolutely.
And what's kind of really exciting for me is what we're seeing is the shift now, I like to say in the audience, that those of us who started playing MMOs are getting older. We have more free time as the kids grow up, become teenagers, and that kind of thing. And we've kind of getting a little sick of 10 years of talent trees and the exact same game reskinned over and over again. And we have the younger kids coming up who are growing up on things like Minecraft. So they're already, their pain button's really high, right? They know what pain can feel like in a game. And again, we're going away from the kind of super accessible game. Let's make everything accessible. And we can make these kind of games and have a good time with it. And a lot of those ideas, like, I've always loved the Eve skill system, and I've pitched it a couple times to different companies, and no one really had interest in it because it was, again, very hardcore. This time around, everybody's like, man, that sounds great.
We say hardcore, but really deep and complex and interesting is what it is. And that's, for a discriminating player, that's what they want. They don't want something too simple because they immediately figure it out, and then they go, okay, then it's just a game.
So let's talk about a couple of the hardcore things about Eve and see how they relate back to Crowfall. So one we've mentioned is skills.
Yep.
And so now, from what I've read so far, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's skill over time based that is training that happens over time, and there's 3 levels of that: a primary, secondary, and tertiary.
Correct.
At different skill rates, and then there's also a use based skill gain. So can you explain how all that works together to make me the grandmaster or whatever I'm going to be in there, wizard?
Eve, again, is the leader in the skill system over time, as far as I've seen it, right? No one has really explored that past Eve. In fact, I really haven't seen it in a fantasy game. So we're looking to +1 it a little bit because it does have kind of its warts like any system, which one of the early things you see us doing is putting in 3 skills that you train at the same time. Eve added a queuing mechanism, which is kind of similar, but we're saying, hey, you can manipulate 3 skills at varying rates to kind of make it more interesting. The usage base is because if you remember back to the very early days of Eve, in the very beginning, it's very slow going. You train a skill, you wait an hour, and then you wait another hour, and then you wait 3 hours. It very quickly, it's not interesting. So we still want to, we've learned things over the past 10 years that people like to see those little dopamine hits from advancing. So what we're saying is the initial portion of any skill, probably the 10 to 20%, is usage based. So as you're using it, you'll hit that point, 20% of the skill.
So I got to go out and swing the sword on the dummy to get
Correct.
that portion. rather than
You
just
don't
over time.
It's of training, but you'll also notice hits coming in the beginning just to make it a little more exciting.
Okay.
I mean, I've watched Eve redo their tutorial probably 20 times in the past 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Again, they've been searching themselves to how to make the game more exciting at the beginning to kind of hook people. And I don't think there's any question in that. So I think a lot of it has to do with, let's make skills exciting right off the bat. Get people learning how a time-based skill system works. Because again, a lot of the people will have played games like WoW and Minecraft and not be familiar with it. We really haven't seen a lot of skill-based games. Maybe Secret World was the last big one in the last, again, 10 years. So another thing we did was Eve had discrete skill ranks with lots of skills with prerequisites. And you could wait up to 30 days on some of those bigger skills, right? You just wait 4 weeks essentially for a skill to go from rank 4 to 5. We've kind of put it on a linear line of 0 to 100, and then we have a scale after that. So you feel those incremental gains over time.
Okay,
yeah.
So it's more like a percentage going up instead of hitting the 4th to 5th level.
Correct.
And so
right.
And so tomorrow I'll be that 0.1% better, and I might be able to measure that.
Right. You'll see. You'll probably have something inform you as you log in that says, "Hey, you gained 2% in archery and 1% in combat tactics while you were offline."
Mm-hmm,
right.
Mm-hmm.
So you can feel those immediate gains and not have to wait 30 days or, I mean,
in some cases, months.
Months.
Yes.
Your character really isn't going anywhere when you have to wait that many months to actually see anything move. So again, we're trying to do a little plus ones to the system that we see that would actually make it more compelling.
In the skill training, do you envision that a character will reach a maximum?
So based on, we do have a drop coming out on this week, later in the week, that will explain more in depth on the character progression. And a lot of it aligns with how your promotion class and your disciplines and your base add up. So unlike Eve, where every character can be everything based on the books that they purchase, ours is a combination of those 3 elements that will give you a maximum that you can train to.
So there is an end. You will achieve maximum potential on a character at some point. Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
At some point, yeah. I mean, we obviously, just like Eve, we want to keep adding new skills over time. I mean, that's the whole.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
As we get time to put more content in, we keep adding more skills. But there will be a point where you can hit the cap for, let's say, archery. I think an example I give is a centaur in one of my previous documents, where your base class gives you 0 to 100, your promotion class gives you another 40. A discipline I took gave me 25, and an advantage at character create gave me 10. So altogether, I can go to 175 polearm skill.
Okay.
Whereas someone who didn't take that combination may only be able to go to 150, 125 even, based on what they chose.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of exciting too, is players can actually kind of choose their own destiny for where they want to go with their skills.
So you can kind of make yourself a narrow, deep character.
Correct.
Or you can make yourself a broader, more multidisciplinary character, but you're giving up some of the depth on.
Correct.
I'm not going to be the best of the best.
That's kind of the way Eve does it, except Eve, you can conquer the narrowness or the broadness with time, with additional time, but it just takes years. So, yeah, no, which I actually like. I don't like, WoW these days. My kids were playing it, and I think they hit level 60 in 3 hours or some crap like that. And I'm like, what's...
Where's the growth?
Yeah, where's the character development? Where's the progression? I mean, that's one of the things that I enjoy so much about Eve, is that I continually work on character development. And that's actually the number one thing that I gravitate to in each one of the games. What is the character development? And so I'm looking forward to that with you guys for sure.
High degree of exploration in the system, so people won't instantly all gravitate towards one thing. That's a goal of ours, is to kind of have hundreds and hundreds of disciplines, so that the exploration and how these things combine together will be very interesting.
Mm-hmm. So how about, you mentioned a little bit about economy, or of the destruction of items or whatnot. So tell us what that looks like.
So for the crafters to have people to sell to, those people need to buy things, right? This was a problem we saw in Galaxies a lot, which was started out as a very player-driven economy, and then over time, with the introduction of things like the anti-decay kits, players had full sets of armor that couldn't be destroyed. The economy kind of broke once you take that decay and destruction element out of it. Eve's a great example. Every time a ship gets blown up, you have to go buy another one, right? And the general rule of thumb is never fly anything you can't afford to replace.
Right.
Okay? So you always save up 2 times the cost of a ship because you know that you're going to get hit at a gate or something, right? I mean, it happened to me many, many times. And so you have to have that element of destruction. Players don't like it, and we've kind of hidden it using the WoW model, for an example. We hid it in tier upgrades. Every time you upgrade a tier of gear, you're essentially destroying and replacing all of your old gear at the end of the day. It's a little different to players because it's not actually being destroyed and taken out of their inventory. But at the end of the day, they're selling it to a vendor and they're replacing it with something more powerful. It's kind of hidden there. We're outright saying that you can lose your stuff if you get it taken from you or you die and it decays all the way to nothing, just like in Eve. It's a little more in your face. So a lot of people have a lot of feelings about that. Usually poor because you don't like getting ganked and all your stuff taken. But you actually need that. That's the big sink in the economy. So the crafters are constantly crafting new stuff to replace the stuff that's getting destroyed. There's a sub role that pops up, which is the harvester, which in Eve is all of the people breaking apart the rocks, right? So you have people going out there gathering the resources because that's a full-time task, and bringing it back to get it crafted. The crafters are crafting it, the combatants are grabbing it, and then they're going out and they're getting it blown up. Which is pretty much the same loop that you see in Eve.
So now the way Crowfall that I have it in my head so far is that that it's not an MMO, it's not an RTS, it's not a MOBA, it's something kind of all the way in between. Maybe some new class. I'm not even sure.
That's what we think, but we don't know what to call it.
So an MMOBA? I don't know. So basically, I'm taking my character and I'm starting to work on him, and I'm not quite in any campaign yet. And I go out to a camp. We go out to these campaigns. How long is a campaign?
Right now, we're saying anywhere from 3 to 6 months.
Yeah,
is what we're kind of
really 1 to 6 months. We'll run all different links and see what people like the most. The risk reward will go up with the duration.
So a longer campaign is going to pay off bigger.
Correct.
Much bigger. So it's going to be linear. It's going to be logarithmic.
Okay, Richter scale type of thing.
Really some awesomeness on that.
Okay.
Since our worlds are going to be constantly destroying, we can kind of gate these things. Unlike a traditional MMO where you just have a world and you have to deal with all the problems. Since our worlds are exploding every couple months, we can tune those things.
Right. So
this is ones that will get tuned almost immediately and probably all the way through the project.
So now for each one of these encounters, I almost look at it as like a MOBA type thing where, you know, all the players come in and you kind of, you know, you build your resources and skill up as you go through into this battle or whatnot, then it ends and it's over. Except these are much longer in duration and much more in depth on how everything works. What's kind of the two questions on this? What does the storyline look in there? Or, you know, is it like, you know, we say Game of Thrones, is like each one of these a chapter of books, and one of them we're going to be with, you know, the mother of dragons freeing the slaves, and another one we're going to be with all the beheadings, and, you know, what does that look like?
Do you want to take it?
Yeah, well, I mean, the narrative is you are an immortal crow sent to this world to pick it clean before it gets eaten by the hunger.
The stories
Wow.
are yours. The stories aren't ours. The backstory's ours, but the stories are yours.
Oh, interesting.
So what's going to happen on that world? You know, the alliances, the betrayals, the conflicts are going to play out until the world is dead, and somebody's going to win, and somebody's going to lose, and some of the losers might kneel to the winner before the thing's over. So that's how it's going to play out. You know, our thing is we're sick of games where you can't really win or lose. you either always win if you put in the time, or there's no losers. It's like T-ball for kids. Every kid gets a trophy.
Remember that word
Right.
accessible?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
accessible.
yeah.
It's accessible for you.
Right.
Mhm.
And the rawness. So we really only want people who have the whatever to get into a game and actually go for it. And either I'm here to win, but I may lose. And if I lose, I suck it up and I figure out how I'm going to win the next time, and I go back at it.
And do you envision that this, that the storyline kind of creates itself? How does this relate to like Game of Thrones?
Well, really, in the factional, it's the faction conflict that is like Game of Thrones.
Okay.
How are you organizing yourself before you go in? And we have 4 distinct rule sets, so there's very different kind of factional ways to group for each kind of rule set. So you may be in a faction that's one of the order, chaos, or balance factions where it's just one of 3, so it's very Camelot like in that sense. So you're on one team, there's 2 other teams, you each have different victory conditions, and you're trying to get your victory conditions and keep the other guys from getting theirs. Or you're in a 12 god battle where each of you are pledged to a god, and now everybody pledged to a particular god is on a faction and fighting against the other 12 factions for dominance. But again, at the end, as you get toward the end of the campaign, if you're losing, you could always come and kneel to your to the winner and get a little bit better piece of the spoils rather than less for being for getting yourself knocked out of the campaign.
Yeah.
So we expect that the emergent player behavior is what's going to be super interesting, and the emergent player stories that go with that, because we expect all kinds of crazy things to happen, and we're not going to. It's not like a permanent world where you say, "Oh, now I got to go in and nerf some stuff or go crazy." We're going to let it play out, no matter how screwed up it is, and then we're for the next campaign.
Yes, again, we equate a lot of it to what 00 Space is in EVE, right? There's all kinds of, we call it space opera that happens out there. So we're going to give the players the tools, and then they're going to kind of work it out. We're not forcing them down a path. The world will change around them in the seasons. Things will get more difficult as the seasons progress. The players may have to do different things to overcome those challenges. So
now, if there's an economy and everything, how does the merchant stuff work? Like, do I build like an actual crafting merchant character, and he's one of the people that I bring into the campaign, and he won't see a minute of fighting, or what do you envision on that?
So one of our goals is to try and keep it to a character in a campaign. Now, this is a goal at this point because it means that if you bring in a crafter, he is all of a sudden very valuable. You need somebody in your team just as much as you, like in any other game where you would need, I need a healer, I need some damage guys. You need people who can build walls. You need people who can build equipment. You need people who can harvest for your team.
You need people who can tunnel under the enemy's fortifications so you can sneak up on them, stab them in the back.
Right. So we have all of these kind of various roles that are outside just your traditional, hey, I need a dude who does a lot of damage. And I make my character just purely focused on damage. You can do that, but if you have a full team that does that, you're going to be kind of naked and gearless, and you're going to be living in a grass hut rather than a castle.
So segue into teams. How do I play with my friends, and do you envision any sort of pro teams working on this stuff?
Wow, that'd be awesome.
That would be great.
I mean, we are going to be talking about tournaments this week, so we haven't announced that, but we are going to be talking about tournaments. So we do see our set of worlds as comprising a season of play and somebody winning a real throne out of it.
You gonna ship that
in real life? Yeah, we'll ship.
All the swords will be pointing inward, though, not outward.
But you were alluding to like team construction. One of the things about our Eternal Kingdoms is that's kind of the pooling spot where guilds can form, people can talk. When you go into a campaign, your standard guild leaders and officers would say, hey, we need people to bring in, you're playing a crafter this time, we need somebody to do these specific roles. Here's the characters who fits those roles the best. That's what you have to play. And you wouldn't want a team to go in there with nothing but centaurs, right? For example, simply because right now we're saying centaurs take a lot of food, they take a lot of warmth. In wintertime, that may not be available. All of a sudden, your team, which is really good in the beginning, may not be so good in winter if they're all focused on the exact same thing.
Okay.
Just like you wouldn't bring nothing but a bunch of battleships into a fight, right?
Right. No, you need the other support.
You need the support, you need the weapons. I mean, you need all of that other stuff going on. So, again, we hope to have that depth with Crowfall, and because it'll make things really interesting.
Mm-hmm. And if you are not having success in one of the campaigns, can you dump out and jump into another?
So, again, we have a goal here. We don't know the specific implementation. We would like to have that character locked to that campaign. And if you bail out, you forfeit basically your embargo. Is kind of a thought right now.
Talk about the embargo and
yeah, we put up a one of our points of interest was the embargo, which is where you put all the stuff during the campaign, and when the campaign ends, everything that you put in your embargo goes to back to your Eternal Kingdom. So that's kind of your reason.
A percentage of it.
Yeah, it's a percentage of it.
Yeah.
I kind of like to equate it to the Tron IO towers when you go talk to your user and you put your disk up there. You're kind of putting all those goods in the embargo, and it just kind of sits there for the rest of the campaign. But you have to balance, do I want to build this fort up, or do I want to kind of keep this stuff for my personal needs? You're going to have a little bit of kind of interesting gameplay.
For the team or for yourself?
Yeah. It's going to be kind of an interesting line. And some people are going to want to do that right off the bat in the beginning of the campaign, which may definitely hurt your team in the resource and materials gathering race.
Well, I think, the crux of great gameplay is interesting, consequential choices. And what we're trying to do is build a game that has lots of interesting, consequential choices. And, it may be we believe it's probably too intense for easily 80+% of the market.
Perfect.
You all know.
I'm in.
It's right up your alley.
There's lots of people who don't, they want their entertainment to be more fluffy and marshmallow-like, right? Sugary and sweet. And this is not what we're building. We're not building fluffy entertainment. We're building entertainment that should compel people. It should make their palms sweat from time to time. It should make you agonize over certain decisions in the gameplay.
Should make you rage quit and then come back later. I've done that a few times.
Flip that table over.
Yeah, don't hurt your equipment.
Yeah. No, I've busted a few mice slamming them on my table before. Yeah. Okay. So I've got a lot of questions that are building up from the viewers, and one of them is this going to be pay to win?
One of our biggest design concerns so far has been avoiding anything that has to do with pay to win. A lot of our early systems, we just simply cut them because we wanted to avoid that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We really want to focus on, yes, we're a business and we need to make money. There will be, our VIP has to do with, again, breadth. You can have more characters, but just like in Eve, more characters doesn't help you in your current campaign, right? Anything we do, we want to really stick with is cosmetic only and has no effect on the campaigns.
Mm-hmm. Is there any way? So you have your premium or your VIP, and that'll be a monthly or whatnot. But there's other people who'll be able to play for free.
It's a buy-to-play product. So once you have the box, just like in Eve, you have one character who you can train skills on.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a subscriber, you will have 3 characters that you can train skills on.
Okay. Will there be any way to Plex your account?
We are talking about a Plex system, yeah. I mean, everybody's going to that. I mean,
mm-hmm.
the market has shown that that's what people want. They want to trade time for subscription.
Some do, yeah.
Right? I mean, so we make that available.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it was inspired first, really, by Eve. Right?
Yeah, I mean, Eve was the kind of the trailblazer on that one as well.
Okay, so let's see here. What will the social structures and interactions be like? I'm not sure I understand that, but it's a question here.
It's like guild structures?
Well, what kind of social structures and interactions will be available? Yeah, okay, we'll go on to the next one. Will it blend? Just
Blend.
you guys. I'm sure you guys have seen those videos.
Come on.
Okay, so will there be kingdoms and for players to take over and fight over that are persistent, similar to the Eve universe? And I think these are the sessions that reset eventually. But will there be anything outside of that longer term that'll be permanent, or?
So the one permanent place we're talking about now is the Eternal Kingdoms.
Mm-hmm.
And right now in our design we don't have long-term sieging in there. I mean, we're still talking about that because when we came out with it, there was a desire for that. So we're not really ready to commit to anything in there. But that is your permanent space.
And that's where we live outside of our campaign.
Correct. That's right.
And can you travel back and forth between the campaign and there, or are you in the campaign and you there to stay?
Well, you can kind of, I mean, you're in the campaign to do your actual fighting and to do the conflict part of the game, but it doesn't mean that the Eternal Kingdoms are where you not only go to take all of your stuff that you bring back, but a lot of the economic game is going on back in the Eternal Kingdoms.
Okay.
Yes, there's an economy in the where you are, so that you can survive and thrive in that area, but you're bringing your loot back there for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And you do have stuff that you can import into the worlds, and different rule sets have different levels of import. So everybody's trying to kind of maximize what they do get to bring with them when they first come into a new campaign world.
But it sounded like the question was more going towards how do I manage my kingdom while I'm in a campaign?
And the truth is you can.
Right. You can go back, but you're locked to the stuff that you were wearing when you were in your campaign. Or I'm sorry, in your kingdom last. Because there is no exchange of gear between most of these campaign sets.
Right.
Okay.
But once it's in progress, that character is locked out there. What he's wearing is what he's wearing. When he goes home, he's probably wearing what he was last wearing in his kingdom. But he can do stuff like mess around with the admin rights of his kingdom, because we can see that there are those kinds of tasks that will need to get done.
Well, there'll be vendors there. There'll be lots of things going on back in the kingdom, and we have a fealty system for the kingdoms, and you've got to keep up with all that stuff.
Right.
Which means you can't, lock all your characters away to where you can't be operating with your.
Yeah, we can't lock you away for 3 months. Just kind of, it'd be like World of Tanks if all your tanks were in missions and you just were sitting around your bay waiting for a mission to end.
Right. That's boring.
You're right. There's still management you need to do in your kingdom to essentially run your fealty tree.
What about survival? Do we have to eat? Do we have to stay warm? Do we have to build shelter?
How much of this can you talk about?
Yeah, not too much, but I want to say yes, there will be some survival elements out there. We're still kind of nailing down the exact details on that, but we have talked about warmth a lot. Mm-hmm. So we are.
You did mention earlier about the guys, in warmth, and that when it goes winter, that's not going to be so easy for them. What happens when you die in a campaign?
You mean you leave a corpse and you go and you respawn at a point?
Oh, you do. Okay. So death's not permanent. It's just an inconvenience.
Yep.
I would say it's kind of a major inconvenience. It's almost like getting potted.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So you have to go all get new equipment again and such. Okay.
In most of the worlds, yes. Most of the rule sets.
Mm-hmm. Let's see here. How'd you guys come up with the name Crowfall? Which is much better than the first name I heard.
Oh, no, that was just a teaser site. We didn't even have the name. Play to Crush was a play on Shadowbane, because that was kind of the Shadowbane motto. Where did the name come from? Well, I mean, the main thing is in the fiction.
You are a crow.
Yeah, you're picking over the bones of worlds that are dying. So it's almost like you're on the battlefield eating the people who aren't quite dead yet. and looting all their crap and bringing it back. So that's your job, is really the gods are sending you to battle for these worlds and to pick them clean. You're picking them clean of artifacts and resources and
thralls.
Souls.
I mean, souls, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're taking the souls. And souls are used in equipment and all kinds of other little things.
Mm-hmm.
And to pay off those gods. The gods are very jealous about getting paid off.
Do you envision this like it's one world, one community? even though you go out into the campaigns, you may be working in that. Does everybody come back to a single world, or is there going to be shards, or?
Well, there's eternal kingdoms, and everybody has one.
Right.
A lot of people will use them they'll actually end up on somebody else's eternal kingdom where they do their majority of their stuff.
I see. So it's not like a community place. It's not like, going to town in WoW and then everybody's there, or in Eve, everybody's at Jita.
Well, actually, so the bigger eternal kingdoms will be like towns.
Yeah. So if an entire guild decides that, hey, we really just don't want to play the guild game, or our guild leader's kingdom is the best, he has the most land open up, then we all just may hang out there. That may become our community spot.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's probably where we also do some planning for the next series of campaigns.
The social and economic hubs will be in some of the eternal kingdoms.
But we understand there's a lot of people who just aren't interested in that kind of play.
Mm-hmm.
They have to play that.
Right. So if you really don't want to build up a kingdom, then you can swear fealty to someone else.
Or you can just sit on yours, because you get one regardless.
Okay. So, big guilds and stuff. I mean, are we going to end up with 1,000 people sitting in one person's eternal kingdom, or?
They could be.
That's a big guild.
Well, there's like Syndicate.
Yeah.
They're very big. There's a few really big ones out there.
Yeah.
In Eve, there's the Goons. They're quite big numbers.
Yep.
So they're a species all their own, but they're quite big numbers.
I think the Goons would probably have like 10 or 12 eternal kingdoms.
Yeah.
Even though our eternal kingdoms are quite large when they're fully populated, that would be quite a few.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
They're not quite continent sized, but they're a good subset of a continent for the biggest eternal kingdoms.
Okay. How big do you, in these campaign areas, how big do you envision this is? Can you equate it to something like in WoW terms of space? What's the battle area, and what does it look like? Give me a mental image of this.
Yeah, we always refer to them as the size of Minecraft worlds. They're just massive, infinite spaces. But obviously, we can't have that because we have all kinds of structures. So there will be a box, and I don't know if saying that both WoW continents slammed together would be even as big as what we're talking about, because we are talking about big spaces.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The world is fully destructible. There's a lot of space in there. We're building it with mounts in mind right off the bat. So that means that you need to have a bigger world.
Mm-hmm.
And it also makes things a little more interesting when you're trying to hold on to most of a world.
In my mind, it's my reference point would be Britannia. And, it's very, very big. Very,
Mm-hmm.
very, not without teleportation.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Maybe even a little too small.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking that goes
Yeah,
way back, and I was thinking I could run across the whole thing in about a couple hours.
It's about half the size of the Eastern Kingdoms if you were to go from top to bottom. I mean, it's.
Yeah.
And how many people will be in one of these campaigns? What's the fighting numbers looking like?
Well, the online numbers are going to be well in excess of 1,000. The real question is, what do we need to make the world feel right?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be the bigger question.
Right.
It's not a technical limitation as much as it is how are we going to make the world feel the right density level. And I don't think we're going to have an answer for that in the near term. That'll be an answer that comes up in testing probably more next year than this year.
Yeah, and when you're playing combat, I mean, how does combat feel with a couple hundred people? How does combat feel with 50 people? Like, what feels the best? It's going to be a feel thing in a lot of cases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We all know that everybody doesn't like the quote-unquote the Zerg running around just kind of a mob from one place to next. So we're hoping that we can make these fights fun and they're just not big old blobs.
Mm-hmm. Well, blobs have their place. So, okay.
Done, it will be done.
Yeah. I was just thinking we're setting up this darn Zerg fleet for Saturday and Eve, and we're all going to be a bunch of newbies, and we're going to go out and terrorize everything. We'll be a bunch of fleas biting someone to death.
Mass suicide. That's great.
Yes, yes. Actually, we use suicide in the name. So, um, okay. So, um, what are some of the special things about Crowfall that I have not asked about or that we've not discussed?
So we've pretty much gone through the character progression. We've gone through the worlds. We've gone through the Eternal Kingdoms. I don't know what we're missing in that.
Well,
Okay.
missing a lot.
I mean, it's just yes, there will be combat. We're kind of just glazing over that as we kind of iron out the wrinkles on our side.
Okay. Well,
we're hoping Voxels make it in.
okay, so that's one thing is there's kind of like this world destruction that can happen.
Right.
And so buildings can be knocked down, and I understand they can be built back up, or
yes.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about. I mean, you have to build the walls. You saw in our demo the placing of the structures as you're building the castles. I'd love to see how that works in giant, large-scale combat, which is one of the things that we will be testing. That's again another vector is the whole. How do voxels and physics and lots of players, what does that blender look like? We really don't have a good example to look at in this one. We're kind of forging ahead in some brave new ground here. So, yeah.
Well, just one of the most underrated things we're doing is adding physics to combat in an MMO world. And so, yeah, there's been some people who've taken some stabs at that, but that combined with destruction is going to open up some new emergent gameplay that I'm sure we're going to be horrified by and also think is awesome.
That's actually one of the most brilliant things about Ultima Online is there's a lot of things in there that happened that really shocked everybody and that were never intended and that turned out to be amazing and amazingly awful at the same time. And but that is the spice of one of the things that made Ultima Online so great. Was all of that.
I think that, again, the discriminating audience that we're talking about is looking for experiences where they can't see the edges, where they don't know when they go over the horizon what's going to be there next. And so we're trying to build something that's complex enough and interesting enough to where they're going to be the ones discovering and creating the emergent gameplay, not us. We're not building a theme park that we know exactly what's going to happen at every stage of the experience. We're building something that the players are going to explore that opportunity space and teach us what's there to be done. And I think that's, to me, the exciting thing about doing games. As long as I've been doing them, I want to still be excited about it. And the only way for me to get excited is to do something a little bit crazy.
Right. Well, with this possible outcome of some fantastic storylines that happen within these campaigns. What is your vision for people who are like YouTubers or streamers or whatnot? How will you support that community to share those experiences out?
Well, we're certainly not going to stand in their way to do it. That's the number one thing. We want to enable anybody who can help us tell those stories to tell those stories, because there's going to be a lot of great stories that need to be reflected back to the other players, because it's modeling, right? If they can see something can happen, then more of it's going to happen, and they're going to think of new ideas to riff off the things that do happen and make even cooler things happen. So, in fact, that community is going to be hugely important to make this thing work in the way that, because as much as the company tries, we're really just trying to keep our nose above water and keep everything running right and do all the nasty stuff that happens below decks that nobody wants to know about when they want to go 35 knots across the water, right? That's our job is to keep the damn thing running and not messing up. And really, the players are going to be the ones who are responsible for taking it wherever it's going to go more than us. Our job is to make sure they hear about it and get the credit for what they're doing.
Yeah.
And the YouTubers and the streamers can help us with that more than we can do it, because we don't have enough people to look at everything that's going on. It's impossible.
Yeah, that's where we'll find out a lot of the things that are going on, as we'll be watching the streams as well.
Okay. Well, I suspect I'll be one of those streamers, so.
Well, it's participatory game making, right? When you start crowdfunding, you're really participating with the audience at a completely different level. We're no longer in that we make it and we kind of throw it down off the mountain, and you guys get to, read the tome that we made for you. No, it's participatory. We're doing this together. Mm-hmm. And just as you can't do it without us, we can't do it without you. That's the way it's going to work moving forward. And I think that we're seeing this more and more. The democratization of how games get made is disrupting the whole industry. Mm-hmm. And I think it's great.
I'm excited. I think you guys are on the right track. It's something new. It's like you said, I can't quite see the edges of it, and I like that. I like sailing down towards the horizon, thinking, well, maybe it's a waterfall out there, but I don't know.
Maybe it's a paradise. You never know.
That's right. So I think that's about it for the questions. But I do want to say you guys have already funded, so you're already achieved your goal. And for everybody who's watching live, there's a Crowfall image underneath the video. You can click on that and take a look. And for everybody on YouTube, there's a link below, and you can check out the crowdfunding on that and get in early because I don't know, if you want in, the earlier you want in, you probably have to get in now.
Well, the best deals, there'll never be better deals than on Kickstarter. We wouldn't, offer a better deal later and kind of undermine the people who've supported us the earlier. So the earlier you're into support, the better deal you're going to get. The other thing is that we are funding stretch goals, and the stretch goal that we're funding right now is mounts and caravans. And so one of the things we didn't talk about was, how are you going to move all these goods around the world? Are you going to have a magic backpack where you put in 1 billion pounds of ore? I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think you're going to have to actually move it and take the risks that are associated with moving stuff from the roving bandits who may be, like you say,
that's going to be awesome. We're going to have to hire security.
Exactly.
Yes,
right.
Yeah, or pay them off.
Yeah, that's happened too. I've done that too.
Everything that's happened in the real world will probably happen here and more.
My wife asks for female characters right from the start.
Yeah.
So
we've
got a bunch of them.
All of the humanoids and some of the monsters, right? We funded the female centaur.
Okay,
my
good.
wife was a huge, where's my female centaur?
Well, my wife, she's tired of playing games where she has to play a guy. So
yeah. Well, that won't be our game.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. And I, gonna follow how things are going and be right there with you guys.
Thanks a lot, Marcus.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.